Hello everyone, this is Pedro, and today I'll be installing an Android style radio into my 2013 Infiniti FX37. If you're like me, you've probably seen that there are very limited choices on what you can do with this car, and it's a pretty outdated system. That 2013 system is a 2003 system if you go all the way back. So to update it, you just have to look at certain options that you have. This is the one that I like the most, and I'll be quite frank, this is the third time I try it. The first two times it didn't work out too well. So this is a Phoenix Automotive radio, and we'll see how that works out. First, let's unbox it. So this here is the box that I received from Phoenix Automotive. Yes, I have already cut the tape, and that's because it's hard to do with one hand. And this is the head unit. Now, as I have mentioned before, I did receive this before, and it wasn't from Phoenix Automotive, but it was this exact same stereo from a different company, which will not be named. And it was very similar instructions as what I'm seeing here. As a matter of fact, they were identical. What was not identical was this wiring harness. This wiring harness actually did not look like this from the last place that I got it, so they sent me this radio with a different wiring harness. I don't know if this is correct, and we're gonna find out today. But here are all the other wiring harnesses that you need to make this work with the car. As you know, that little computer in the car shows you tire pressure monitor sensors, it shows you your fuel range, it shows you a lot of different things, so it's kind of integral to the operation of the car. We're going to see if this actually works with the car. The last time, it didn't work with the car, and it was giving me a lot of error codes. So hopefully this takes care of that. This right here is the Infiniti it's going into. And before I bring the box in and start installing stuff, I want to show you what the radio looks like today. Alright, so here you see the stock Infiniti FX37 radio. This is actually the base model, so it doesn't have the navigation system. It is a very nice radio in some ways, but this is probably the thing that bothers me the most, and I'm sure a lot of you agree. This is a very outdated display, and it really doesn't do much in terms of connectivity with multimedia. You have your radio, your auxiliary, which is essentially what you can use with your USB and your headphone jack. You have your disc. I thought this was a 6 CD changer. It's actually just a single CD changer. It would have been nice if it was 6. I may have kept it. And you have a few other buttons here. I think the most beautiful piece of this entire thing is not only the blue lighting that you see here, you also see it right up here. This is very luxurious. And this right here, these lights are all very nice, but this clock definitely makes a difference. But again, looking at it, taking a step back, this is a bit outdated. And some folks will say, I'd rather keep this system and just throw Apple CarPlay or Android Auto up here. Other people will say, I'd rather just change this entire thing. I'm one of those people that decided to change it. And I know it's a lot more work, and it does lose a lot of its originality, but we'll see what it looks like in just a second. I'll show you the tools that we need first. These are the tools you'll be using most of the time. Just a regular screwdriver and one of these pry bars, plastic pry bars, of course. You don't want to damage anything within your car. The first thing we're going to do is actually quite simple. You can probably do this with your fingers depending on your strength. Right in between the felt and this plastic cover that you see here, all you really have to do is dig your nails in and pull it right out. It was very simple. Don't force it, of course. You don't want to break anything. Now, this is where it gets a little bit more complex. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to remove the shift knob. And let me see if I can do that with one hand here. You want to pull this down, the boot. Just push it down. It'll be fine. You're not going to damage anything by pushing it. And using one of these little plastic things, pull on this clip. Make sure you don't lose it. This thing does fly everywhere, so I'm gonna need my two hands for this one. Let's see. Trying to see if I can record myself and do this at the same time. I guess not. But here's the clip. Take a look at the orientation. This is the way that it comes out. So it comes out like this. For safeguard, I would just put it right back into the shift knob. So let me show you what that looks like. So again, just put it right back into the shift knob so that you don't lose it. And it should look like that. Put this to the side. And now put your armrest up. Start pulling this up slowly. And yes, it does split between the chrome and the plastic. That's something that never became clear to me in any of the videos I've seen beforehand. So, pulling it up. And now, it feels like it's jammed, but it really isn't. You have to make sure that you pull up closer to the top edge so that you don't break or bend anything. And there we go. You have a choice. You can either take this off by unplugging it, or if you want to do what I do, that wire is long enough that you can just put it down on the side. Obviously, if you're having help, you may want to unplug it and move it, but I just put it down to the side. And this right here, at this point in time, now you have a little bit of a conundrum. You're gonna have to push this button down, make sure your e-brake is on, push this button down, and move the shift lever as far back as you can, because it will get in the way otherwise. Same thing with this coin holder here. You can just pull this out. It isn't bolted into anything. There we go. And this one you could probably unplug if it's easier for you. There we go. Off to the side as well. And now we get to this point. At this point, we will have to start removing some screws, starting with the two of them down at the bottom here. That awkward silence. There's another one right down here. God, you gotta love long screwdrivers, don't you? They make it much simpler, but sometimes they're hard to get on the screw head. Alright, so those are the two that we need to take off. As you just see, this easily swings up. Very easily. And now we need to start unplugging some stuff, and you have to make sure you do this carefully. We don't want to damage anything, just in case you ever want to put the radio back in. This is a clip here. And for some of you, it might be easier to do it with a screwdriver. For me, I prefer to use my fingers because, you know, my fingers are already kind of crap anyway. But some of these are very easy to take off. That's probably the hardest one to take off, that one you see there. These other ones are very easy, so don't jam them. Don't start trying to rip them out. That's definitely not the right way to do it. All right, and there we go. And that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of these wires get taken off, and there they are right there. That's the first step. And now that we're here, we're actually going to have access to a lot more screws. The ones that you probably noticed right here are holding down the screen. So take off the screen. There's one right there. You know, I wish I could do this a lot easier, but I have to use my hand and hold the camera as well. I apologize for that. I hope I'm not giving anybody motion sickness. Alright. And those 2 screws are really the only thing that hold this entire thing up here. So all you gotta do is pull it. And again, I know you haven't seen me use the orange thing yet. You kind of don't have to, but right now all I did was just pull it out. That was it. This is the only plug that holds this whole thing in here. So we're gonna put this to the side as well. And now we have the final 4 screws. There's 2 right here, and then there's 2 down here. if you can see those right here and right there. So I'm gonna take these out. And here's the other one. From what I understand, this is the same process for the navigation equipped FX37 and QX70. The only difference is that that screen is a touch screen on the nav, as well as this bottom piece here it's a different computer. But other than that, this installation and removing process is the same. The harness, without question, will be different. So the harness that I'm about to show you right now, this is again for the base model FX37, which applies for some FX35s and almost all QX70s, will be the same. You'd have to check your verification though. All right, so after those 4 screws are taken out, this right here is the stereo unit. Again, unplugging stuff, unplugging stuff, unplugging stuff, unplugging more stuff. You see how easy these come out? They're not like your typical radios. And unplugging stuff, and this one right here might require a screwdriver, the little gray one. I'm gonna use my little pry tool here. And that's that. That removes the ones at the top, and there are 2 more down at the bottom. There's the second to last one, and the last one. This one right here is actually, I believe, for either the antenna. Actually, yeah, it's for the antenna. So those mini plugs is what you have to take off. But now the radio is out. I'm actually gonna put this back here since I'm running out of room up in the front. And now the last thing that you have left is just this unit here, but there are no more screws. All you have to do is pull on it, tilt it forward, and then kind of wiggle it out of there. So maybe it'll be easier if you take a look at this. It's a hook. It's in a hook shape. And don't just yank it out, because there's still one more connector in the back. For the navigation system, there's another connector here, or here I believe. That's for the touchscreen. But again, we have the base, so we won't be needing that. Alright, now we're gonna get into installing the new radio, but this is essentially what you need to do. And now we'll get started with the installation of the radio. Before I continue, I think it's really important that we talk about some of these harnesses that you get, because there are a lot. So let's talk about some of these. This right here is your main harness. This is what makes the whole thing work. And as you just saw, there are a lot of empty harnesses there. Some of them will still be empty after you plug all of these in. But this is self-explanatory. This is not the reason why I'm making this segment of the video. You have this little antenna here that goes in the back of the radio, also self-explanatory. This is what turns your regular USB that's inside the the glove compartment, the armrest thing right down there. This is what makes it work with the new radio. This, I am not 100% sure what it's for, but I will let you know by the end of the video. This is what makes the speaker system, the Bose system, work with this car. This is for the stock backup camera, and I believe you can also add aftermarket backup cameras to this. Yes, you can. This is the GPS antenna that you have to wire somewhere. This actually says to put it. It says to put it closer to the passenger side window. I'm gonna probably install it somewhere else. You have this little wire here that apparently is for a DVR. We'll see if we use it or not. And then you have a USB connector. This is gonna plug in to this little gray thing that you see here. And I'm gonna show you everything step by step, but I just wanted to point out the many different harnesses that you have in this kit. All right, so we're back. I had to install these wires with both hands, so I had to pause the video, but I just wanted to show you a couple of things that I think you're gonna find interesting. First of all, every single connector that I show you here, if you do not see it here, this is not the right harness for your car. If it's an FX37 base edition, or an FX35 base edition, or even a QX70 base edition. In other words, if you don't have navigation, this is the right video and this is the right harness. You're going to notice that there's some that are very obvious. This wire right here, very obvious as to where it goes. This one over here is very obvious as to where it goes. Same as this one and this one. But this one's also obvious. Where is it? There it is. This one is not as obvious. And the reason why I say that is because this wire from Phoenix Automotive that comes with the yellow, black, and white plugs into the red, black, and white, but it can also plug into this other plug that's blue, green, white, red. It has a whole bunch of other colors. It has obviously a lot more wires. This is not the one that it goes into. It goes into the one that has 4 wires. That is really the only place where you would have an issue. Everything else is kind of self-explanatory as to where it plugs in, and that's the reason why I didn't actually take a video of that. But take a look at the wires for reference so that you know that you've done it correctly. And then lastly, we have these two and this one. There are a lot of disconnected wires. Some of them you'll still have to plug in, but some of them you won't. So I'm gonna put these to the side so that you can see which ones are still left. But there's some of these that you will no longer need. All right, and we'll get to those in just a second. The next thing we're gonna plug in is this little USB adapter. It really is just a USB adapter, but it plugs in specifically to the factory USB port. So we're gonna plug that in, as so. Hard to do with one hand. There you go. So we plug that in, and now we have a regular USB. You may have seen this bag earlier. The bag is labeled as USB output, and you have to plug in that USB into one of these 2 different outputs. It wasn't very specific as to which one. I always plug it into one just because that's where my phone is going to be. So we plug it into USB 1. So it's the brown connector, and there are 2 different USBs. I plug it into USB 1. Before you go and sell that old radio, there's something that I wanted to point out to you as well. There's some parts you're going to be reusing from the old radio, and also from the old vents. This right here was actually part of the radio. You may have recalled that we took this out of the radio, or out of the dash, and the radio was actually right down here. You have to take T20 torque screws out of the side. There are 4 on each side to remove the stereo. Now, don't do what I do and make sure that you take out the stereo with no CD in it. So if there's a CD you normally listen to, make sure you take that out, or else you're gonna have to replug all this stuff back in anyway to take that CD out. But anyway, once you take that out, you're going to be reusing this white base plate. Again, it's actually it's called a CAN port or something of the sort. And this is where these 2 wires that we put up here earlier go plugged into. Without this, you will see multiple error codes. Not to say that we won't see any anyway, but this will eliminate a lot of the error codes, and it'll make the car run a lot more stable. So do not forget to reuse this and to plug those 2 things in. I'm going to screw them in, and then we can continue the installation. The other thing you're going to need is these vents. You're going to want to remove these vents with a screwdriver. It's just a single screw up here, or right here rather, on each side. And then you have to be careful with the clips. The clips are actually back here. You can't really see them, but they're back here And back here, you just have to be very gentle with them while you're pulling them out, and try not to break them. I'll show you where those go in just an instant. Let's continue with the rest of the wiring that you see inside the bags. So let's start with this camera peripheral that you may have seen earlier. I only see one connection here, and that would be the one that goes to this one. If you wanted to connect anything else, like a forward or even a right side camera, you can use these as well. So, but for now, you only really need to just hook up one. I hope you already did this, but this right here is for the USB. You basically plug in this adapter to the USB, and then it goes into this USB cord that I showed you earlier, which has the brown tab. And again, I plug it into USB number 1. This right here is the main harness. Right down here, this is also part of the main harness, like a little beige connector. And this one right here, I haven't really figured out what this one's for, but it says auxiliary in, and it goes into this connector, which also says auxiliary input, essentially. I don't know exactly where it goes, but I do know that if I follow these lines all the way back to the harness, it connects to these wires right here. And if I look on the back side of that harness to the factory, there is a connection there. So I'm just gonna leave it hooked up, not even gonna know what it's for, and I'm just gonna plug everything into the back of the radio. But before we do that, as you probably noticed, the radio doesn't come with vents. As I mentioned before, you got to take off the vents from the old one. So here are the vents, and we're gonna install those onto this before we go ahead and put anything back in. And at the end, this is what it should look like. Kind of looks pretty factory if you ask me. And now we're just gonna start plugging in everything from the back. A lot of this is actually on the only bit of information that they sent from the factory, so it should be pretty straightforward. So if you take a look at this sheet of paper, that's the only source of information that you get, is where you plug these in the back of the camera. That's quite about it. So I'll let you follow that, and then we'll meet back here. So this is what the finished product should look like from the back. It's hot out here in Massachusetts today, but this is what the radio should look like from the back. Right now you have all of your connectors plugged in. I'm not sure if you can see all of them there. There are quite a hefty amount of wires. That's the Wi-Fi antenna right there, and there's only one left to plug in. That's going to be this wire. Where is it? Where are you? That's going to be this last wire that came with the kit. There it is. It's this one right down here. This will be the last one you have to plug in, and it goes to the back of the radio head. The reason why I didn't plug it in yet is because it's also one of the shortest wires in the kit, so you don't want to pull that. So we're gonna go ahead and plug that in, and that does power your car. So, or rather, it powers the radio. So if you have any shorts and you hear something pop or click, this is where you're gonna hear it. Hopefully, if you've been listening to this this video, you shouldn't have any of that. And that click basically did it. All right, after taking a moment of pushing all the wires away, this is actually what the finished product looks like. It's very nice. It takes up a big portion of your dash, so whatever you have on there is going to take the main attention in your cabin. There's a couple of things I wanted to note. First of all, I know there were a lot of wires, but I want you to know that there's so much space back there now that you remove so much of the big bulky components that it'll fit. It will fit. It's just you have to kind of work with it and kind of push it back, but make sure that you don't pinch or you don't cut any wires while doing that. Then you're gonna have shorts, and you're gonna have much bigger problems than what you would have originally had. And I kept this USB out. This is USB 2. I already used USB 1 for the factory setting. You can put that anywhere else here. Before we continue, I also wanted to mention that down here I've screwed in these screws before when I showed you putting in that that CAN bus box, you're gonna have to unscrew these to slide this radio back, or else it won't actually fit through. But once you unscrew them, just push the brackets over to the side a little bit, push in the radio, and then put the screws back on, and then put these screws back on. It doesn't have as many screws as the original set, so you're gonna have some left over. I had 2 left over. That's probably how many you'll have as well. And without further ado, let's take a look and see what the radio does now. So here we go. How lovely. It won't start. And there's my key. Let's take a look and see. Oh, that's right. Don't forget to put your car in park. That will definitely not allow it to start. Now I feel like an idiot. But there we go. There's the radio. Works perfectly fine. Or rather, it's connected perfectly fine, I believe. Let's take a look at some music. See if any of this stuff works. It's really hot out here, so the first thing I'm gonna do is turn on the AC. It works. Oh, sweet, sweet AC. Oh, and my vents work too, which I just installed. Awesome. Let's see if the radio works. I'm gonna assume I go to radio. I'm gonna have to get used to this little volume thing down
here. And this explosion has...
They don't provide any real
Ask your good friend Dylan if it is...
It does work.
Man, it's like an island.
Let's get to the more important part now. So great, the radio's working, that's awesome. This wasn't there before this all began. So let's take a look and see what can and can't be fixed. So this key sign is perhaps the only thing that wasn't here beforehand. If I put on my seatbelt, I'll be good. Not exactly sure why my lights are on. It's on auto, so the sensor is probably not working because it is daytime. Those lights shouldn't be on, and if that doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother me, but it does bother me. It's not supposed to be on right now, so I'm gonna have to look into see what settings need to be played with. But right now, that key sign and the fact that the lights are on are kind of an issue, so we're gonna have to address those in a minute. All right, everyone, so here we are again, just finishing up. I was doing a lot of research on this, and it seems that I don't actually have an answer for that key light. I do have an answer about these 2 different lights over here. That was my own fault. I was blocking out the sun. The light sensor is right over here, and just with a few seconds, those lights went off. So the only real issue is just that one key card, but other than that, this radio works very well. I'm actually using my steering wheel controls, which you do have to set up. I will tell you, you have to do that. One thing that I never noticed is that up here, this actually slides. And if you go to settings, this is where you find all of these different things, and Phoenix Automotive actually does a much better job at explaining to you what you need to do, but they probably won't tell you about the wheel settings because I didn't find that, even though it's probably there. So right here where it says wheel settings, go to wheel settings, and for this particular car, you select low Z, and then every single one of these, you press the button, and then you hold the button on your steering wheel that corresponds to that function. It was very easy, self-explanatory, and it's awesome. So that works well. Now I'm just waiting for 4 questions that I have for Phoenix Automotive. One, this homepage, there's a light blue one that I've seen. I think it's called the Mark III. I just bought this July of 2020. The videos that I've seen are from 2019. I'm just curious, is there any way that I can update mine to look like that? My second question is, of course, this key light. This doesn't seem serious right now, but it can potentially be serious in the future if my key doesn't want to work when I'm 100 miles away from my house or something of the sort. So I have to find out more about this key light. Another question that I had, this car had a TPMS sensor that has, of course, the readings of the actual weight or the actual pressures. Where do I find that in this radio? And my fourth and final question is actually about these apps. And I don't know if this is something that anybody else is going to be interested in, but these apps, I tried to download apps from the App Store, from the Play Store rather, and there's some missing. There's no Disney Plus, which is, I basically got this for my daughter. There's no Netflix, which will keep my wife off my back. So some of the apps are missing. I don't know if it's because of this particular tablet that's being used as the base or if it's something else. And the last thing, it's just something that I just noticed right now. My outside temperature gauge has been at 97 degrees the entire time I've been here. That's how hot it's been when I've been installing this car. However, it is significantly cooler now than it was when I was actually installing it, and it's still stuck at 97 degrees. I can assure you that this worked when I started doing this. So I'm going to reach out to Phoenix Automotive, but for the install, as you can see, this is the end result, and it works very well. Even the reverse camera works very well, so it's awesome. It's definitely an upgrade that, as long as you can live with some of these little things that you have to do yourself, like programming the steering wheel and going through all of the wiring, it's worth it, because as I showed you before, this is a big improvement over what it used to be before. So again, it does work. It does work well. We'll see how long it lasts, but if you have any questions, you should always give a call to whoever sold you the unit. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it helps some of you figure out what you want to do with your FX37 or QX70 or FX35. Thanks, guys.